Welcome to the Industry Angel Podcast. We hear from the best business minds across the globe. Entrepreneurs, social influencers, marketing mavens, and sales rock stars. We've got them all. Here comes your weekly dose of inspiration with your host, Ian Farrar.
Happy New Year, everyone. This is the first episode of the Industry Angel 2019. Hope you had a fantastic holiday and you've recharged the batteries back in the zone. You know, I do like this break, but wow, I am such a creature of habit. I just love the routine. Take me out of my routine, I am hopeless. But I'm looking forward to getting back on track, getting the diet back on track as well. I'm a bit late with this episode actually, as things are so busy. I've been delivering lots of training already, meeting some fantastic people. I must give a shout out to Mark and Jimmy, who were on a course I ran this week, who've been listening, and Kevin Richardson, who got in touch via LinkedIn. Kevin listens on Spotify and he's enjoying it, and he said it's like when you find a new series on Netflix and there's 5 seasons to watch. Now, Kevin, I often hear that. People come in and say, right, I'm going to start at the beginning and work through, because it's pretty wild what we've covered off in these 100-odd episodes. So, just like Kevin, I'm really interested to know how you listen. So, drop me a line on the usual channels, all the social channels, or contact me through industryangel.com. So, today's episode is one I recorded before the Christmas holidays, but I didn't get it out because I was too busy eating and drinking. Well, at least I'm honest, eh? Today we have business transformation expert and founder of Sullivan and Stanley. Welcome to the Industry Angel, Pat Lynes.
Hello, Ian. How you doing?
I'm all right. It's Monday, 10 o'clock, so I'm not the most fresh at the moment.
Oh, fair enough. Well, it's December, so only a couple of weeks away for a break.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the silly season now, so literally every night I've been on these events and parties and so it's starting to take its toll already, and it's only what we've got now, the 10th of December. Oh my God.
How many have you got left?
I'm out tomorrow night and Wednesday night as well, and then Friday and Saturday, and it's every week. It's every week.
Yeah, we just moved into our new workplace in Borough Market in London, so we had an opening last Wednesday. For once in my life, I managed to get all our partners, suppliers, associates and clients in to see us for that one night. So I managed to get about 10 to 15 sort of usual dinners and catch up into one night.
Excellent.
So I'm most pleased with myself.
That's the way to do it. Did you host that then?
We did, yeah. So we just we moved into the new workspace last Monday, so it was a bit of an opening party stroke networking event. Did
you cover the expenses bill?
Yes, we did.
Was it painful at the end of the night?
No, not too bad. It was just pretty informal, glass of wine or a bottle of beer or a soft drink and a mince pie or two. So yeah, it was very informal. It was great. It was really good to see everyone.
Now, you see you guys down the Big Smoke down in London, you obviously don't push as hard as us here in the Northeast. A glass of wine and a bottle of beer, really?
Yeah. Well, there's no. Yeah, I don't know. What's it like? What's the networking event like up in the Northeast?
Well, we had that for breakfast, man.
Oh, right, fair enough.
It's December. We're not messing about here, Pat. So you're down in London. So this is your business, Sullivan Stanley, we're talking about here.
Correct. Yeah, I started it in early 2016. So we're coming into the end of coming into sort of third year territory now, which is good because it's nice to say that we're not a startup anymore, and managed to sort of meander my way through that first couple of years, which was tough as boots, but we got through it. So yeah, and doing okay.
Did you found the business on your own, Pat?
I did, yeah. I founded it on my own. It was something that I when you have these things in your mind and you think, I've got to get this idea out of my head and into the market. And, it was an idea I first had back in 2008, but I probably didn't have the confidence or experience to really take it to market. So yeah, just got to that point where I thought, do you know what? What if I don't do it and someone else does? I'll probably never forgive myself. So I'm the type of person that doesn't like to have any regrets. So yeah, I'm glad I took the plunge and created Sullivan and Stanley.
Well, what we've done there is we've built up a little bit of intrigue, okay, for the last couple of minutes. So our listeners are thinking, okay, so what does Pat actually do? Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to tell us, Pat, about Sullivan and Stanley. What was it for? Why did he found it? Like, what was the idea? What was the little gap in the market that you must have saw across your years?
Yes, no problems. So in short, if you look at my background, I was traditionally a senior IT and change recruiter. So I worked for a big IT recruitment firm called Harvey Nash, which, PLC, was listed on the stock exchange until recently, and very much sort of helped boards and leadership teams of organisations, deliver key IT and change programs by deploying contractors and deploying interim leaders. So I'll use the word interim, but for your listeners, see it as a kind of an executive super temp, is what I'd like to describe it, to sort of de-jargon it somewhat. After that particular period of my life, sort of after 7 years, decided to move off and join an organisation called LaFosse Associates and build that from scratch to about 4 to 140 odd people, 8-figure revenue business, and very much it was a more focused, customer-centric version of Harvey Nash, but very much still an IT and change recruiter at heart. And I kind of noticed over the last sort of 3 or 4 sort of years of that tenure, if you like, sort of 2012, 2013 to 2016, that organisations were trying to cut out recruiters, so trying to cut out the intermediary. So we see a lot in other industries of intermediaries trying to be cut out. Also intersecting with the fact that there was this massive talent drain of not executive sort of workers into this sort of interim market. So people leaving the corporate world to have a different relationship with their career. And that was kind of intersecting with management consulting fatigue at a corporate level. And I had this idea in my mind where I thought, I'm managing 120, 130 recruiters. We're standing behind preferred supplier lists. There's a race to commoditize the provision of sort of white collar labor. What if there was an idea to create a hybrid model and bring it to the market? And the premise of it really was forming a company with some of the key interims and key exec workers that I've been working with for years, and taking a business to the market that showed up in much different fashion. So still providing good people on demand quickly, but also by providing a consulting service with a consulting wrapper, but deploying teams of interims around a consulting wrapper. And that's in essence what Sullivan and Stanley is, which is a formation of interim workers that have come into a business with sort of 2x recruiters, trying to take on the management consulting world and offering organisations a new way to deploy capability in an era where transformation is industry wide. If you look at the retail sector at the moment, there's a lot of companies that are dying. So some industries have got a kind of sort of transform or die mentality. So that's where the sort of the idea came from.
It's interesting you mentioned there about sort of teams of interim. So what we're saying there is that you would deploy 5 people in an organisation to run a project? Is that how it might look?
Can do. It really depends on what the problem is that the client's facing. If you look at the traditional recruitment world as it stands right now, a client will phone you up and say, I need 4 or 5 contractors. The recruiter will connect the contractors or candidates to the client, and then they're fired into the department, and then the client has to manage them. Now, if the client doesn't want to do that, they would, in essence, look to maybe go to the consulting world. So, do I go to one of the big 4? Do I go to one of the larger consulting firms? And there, when you look at that kind of model, there's deep mistrust with that kind of larger model at the moment. So, I wrote a book recently, and in the heart of that book was some research I undertook interviewing 100 execs, saying, what current routes to capability do you use? What do you like about the current routes? What frustrates you about the current routes to capability? And in an ideal world, what would you like to see? And what came out of that research was a couple of interesting things, but actually the main thing was that people have had enough of management consultancies and people have had enough of recruitment firms, and they want a bit more of a flexible solution that sits in the middle. So, I mean, on the whole, it is on average between sort of 3 and 5 people as a team that are deployed.
And these people have worked together on other projects, Pat? They know each other, they work really well together, or do you kind of cherry pick them against what you've got on your pool of talent?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Ian. So I've probably resourced over, 100 successful transformations over my career. Because I was brought up by sort of two Irish parents, I've been brought up with sort of like two things. One is community and building relationships for the longer term. So I've stayed in touch with about 500 associates. So we have a pool that we use of people that we've used before. We don't go out to open market. And instead of recruiting in the traditional fashion, what we do is we provide workshops and open interactive sessions where we bring our associates in to our workshop area and see who works well together, cross-pollinate them around different problems that execs would face. So whether it's program management, whether it's strategy and architecture, whether it's with cultural change or servant leadership or whatever some of the hot topics might be, we'll stress test which small pools of people work well together and then deploy them as a sort of a pre-formed, pre-gelled team to help organisations deliver key projects or transform into a bit more of a faster organisation. Because the big problems at the moment is the industrial corporate world is really struggling to keep up with newer startups and heavily funded newer organisations that are designed without all the baggage that corporates have got at the moment. So technical debt and organisational debt. So too much bureaucracy, too much over process, and just legacy skills and legacy leadership skills. So the premise of teams as a service or interim teams is to help corporates go from where they are to where they need to get to survive in a hyper competitive world.
That was a great way of putting it. I'm glad I asked that question. So I really got a good idea of what that looks like. And I love the way you're stress testing and, making sure these teams can fire together. Something you mentioned there about, the startup community. How can we put these teams in that you've got into a corporate, but still keep that flexible agility that team has? Would they not have to go in and still abide to that corporate's processes? And the teams that you put in, are they not people who've kind of maybe worked in industry for a decade or two and maybe aren't as agile as some of the younger ones?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. There's lots of ways to answer that. If you look at it, so the reason that I wanted to use interims as the consulting force, if you like, Ian, was because on the whole, they are very experienced individuals that have been in the corporate world. They might have been in, startup environments. They've delivered lots of successful things before. They've been there. They've done that. They've got the scars. They've got the experience. They've got the know-how.
Yeah.
The spirit of an interim really is there to come in, be loyal to you, be there to over-deliver, to share their IP and knowledge transfer and get what needs to be done. So the point to note there is, I think, when you look at that sort of route to capability, it's quite a trusted route, but misunderstood, as opposed to traditionally if you went to key knowledge workers or key advisory or leadership capability, you might go to management consulting, and their model on the whole can be a pyramid model or a model designed to sort of keep you in the problem and to keep invoicing you. So the premise was very much around this, deploying interims with the spirit of doing the right thing for the customer. So it's a really good question to say, how would a team of interims help an organisation get more of a startup mentality? So one of the things that we talk about with teams as a service is getting a mission-based mentality. So when you're designing a team with the exec, you'll get them into a workshop environment at the front end, and you're in a very basic format. Where are you now? Where do you want to get to? What obstacles in the way? Building that kind of potential solution for the client. And more often than not, what they ask for is, how can we cut through the bureaucracy? How can we get a lean startup mentality? Can we pilot this over in the corner and, start flashing up some incremental change and feeding some benefits to the exec, and then getting that kind of pull change mechanism going on? So starting off small and then starting to cross-pollinate with the perm. So a lot of where I think things need to change in the corporate world is historically, because key projects and programs have been quite hard, or, change management's been quite hard, the sort of traditional exec would usually go to the big four or the big consulting firms to say, look, outsource this. I'll get the signature from the big badge, which means I'm protected if anything goes wrong, and you come in and you do it. Which actually I don't think is inherently solved many of the problems that they're facing at the moment, i.e. most corporates still don't have a change capability internally, and most of them have outsourced their strategy, and actually a lot of the permanent workforce aren't learning or getting involved in some of the key more interesting initiatives like big change programs or big IT programs. So, what we're finding now is by putting in a small experienced team for an interim period, cross-pollinating and working with the permanent workforce, it becomes much more of a trusted way of helping an organisation transform, because they're working with the leadership team, working with the execs, working with them mid-management and the whole organisation, and then helping them to actually deliver it through sort of co-creation, knowledge transfer. Within deploying interim teams, we have a massive coaching element to it, which I think, if you look at big corporates, the first thing to go these days, Ian, is kind of training budgets, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we did a workshop recently, and we had someone from ASOS who was their sort of head of data and analytics, and he was saying at ASOS they promote a day a month for learning and just learning only, which is, it's nice to hear, right? Those things. But then if we look at one of our other clients, they block YouTube, they block social media, they block everything. Yeah. So it doesn't promote the culture. So I think, the future consulting firm is one that, has a responsibility to go in and help a permanent workforce change and leave a capability. So, that's something that's really key. But to answer your question, I think a lot of it is to get that sort of pilot mentality, that lighthouse mentality. And often in big corporates, you have to start off small, because, the best results we see is when you start off small and then you start to get that sort of buy-in from the wider business. Some of the best change efforts happen when, one or two people are sort of banging the drum.
I enjoyed what you said about the training budgets there, because straight away I thought, if you wanted to bring in an interim team and the budget wasn't there, I guess you could pull budgets from the likes of training, because you're going to be coaching and training staff. So, that might be something when you're doing your commercials and negotiating, you might say, well, actually, you can pull budgets all together from different parts of the company, because we will be doing an element of training and that kind of thing. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So interestingly enough, we talk a lot about these experienced teams that you kind of parachute in, and some of the people will have the battle scars. Do they ever want to stay in the organisation? Is this a worry for you when you put people in, that they end up actually becoming a permanent fixture in there?
It's never a worry, because with a client first mentality, one of my maxims, if you like, is medium to long term relationships drive short term decisions. So when you're putting a top 5% knowledge worker or executive leader who's gone into advise, help, shape, strategize, deliver, improve, remediate, whatever it might be, invariably people start to really build an emotional connection to that person and a reliance on that person. So on occasion we get people that we had it sort of three months ago where one of our key associates just said, I've just landed here, I get the leadership team, they've just asked me to come in to be the CIO. I've got an absolute wonderful opportunity to deliver a transformation for a key piece of work I'd like to see through to the end. and it suits my family situation right now because there was a certain thing that happened. So it's almost like you release with honours because you think, well, the client's happy, the associate's happy. It's kind of a win-win situation. So we feel like we've added extra benefit apart from going in for an interim period and then exiting.
You mentioned management fatigue. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Where were you coming from when you mentioned that?
So what, management consulting fatigue?
Yeah, that's the term you use. That my kind of ears pricked up there.
Management consulting fatigue. I think if you look at the two main routes to capability that have been historically in play for many decades now, is when you're looking to get an answer for something, or looking to shape a strategy, or looking to get advice, or looking to get a team of experts in to help your corporate world in one way, shape or form, whether it's IT, finance, legal. You would either go out and recruit permanently, or you go out and recruit contractors or interims or freelancers, same thing, whether, sort of junior, mid or senior experts, or you go to management consultancy. So I don't know, Ian, do you remember the term that's, I think, still pervasive now, that you don't get fired for hiring IBM?
I do indeed. I regularly use that term.
Yeah, same. So there's that premise where, we want to do something that's big. We've got to implement a big, huge change. We need to put a strategy that's going to, help transform our business or give us access to new revenue lines or triple our profit or whatever it might be. On the whole, the de facto route is to go to the management consulting world. So with that, mindset of you don't get fired for hiring IBM, replace IBM with any of the big four, the big 10, and the same thing, it rings true, which is, if we go over to management consulting firms, then, it's de-risked somewhat and they know what they're doing. So, don't get me wrong, there's some great partners in some of these management consulting firms. There's some great pockets of areas of excellence in these management consultancy firms, but it just feels like they've grown exponentially over the years, from traditionally, audit to, system integrators to technology consulting to advisory, to where you get at the end what happened with Carillion this year, where, you had the big four pretty much running the whole business. And that was the sort of first, if you like, large-scale media exposure to the big four, and a call for the regulation of the big four and the breakup of the big four. So if you go over to that, actually now starting to filter through to mainstream media, and then drop down a level to what a lot of executives are thinking and feeling, and to the temperature of the market that I've tested by, spending, every day I must speak to 2 or 3 executives, probably meet about 3 to 5 a week. And then, of course, did this piece of research with 100 executives, which is one of the bases of my book, The Interim Revolution. People are looking for an alternative. Management consulting firms are expensive. The pyramid model, it's sometimes difficult to swallow in the more recent world. So paying sort of £1,500, £2,000 a day for graduates to learn on the job, or deploying the A team. Then the A team feathers out over 6 weeks, and then the B and the C team start to come in. And it's just incredibly expensive, and it's just not designed to transfer IP or knowledge transfer or upskill and coach. So it's clear that the executive community is looking for something different. And that's why I'm saying the word management consulting fatigues. I think people are sort of tired with what they've used for the last couple of decades. And, there's I think a great term by Marshall Goldsmith that says, what got you here won't get you there. And I think that's very much rings true to the corporate world transforming, because as the older industrial world is colliding with this new hyper disruptive world, some of these older models aren't helping at all. In fact, they're creating more confusion, more complexity, and in some instances, costing organisations like Carillion its existence.
Yeah, I totally agree. And something that rang true at the top of the conversation, you mentioned about just invoicing. I've done this myself. I've worked on projects, and I had a similar vein in terms of, looking after the mission. I wanted to get that project done and dusted. I wanted it to be successful. What I didn't want to do, and I know commercially you might want to do this in business, is to wed yourself to that organization and just milk it and just keep invoicing. You really want to just get in there and get the job done and get the best for the client, because they'll bring you back again or they'll refer you on again. And I think I have seen a lot of that where you just think, let's get our feet under the table and we can just milk this and just keep invoicing them. And that's dated now. I think it's really dated. What I love to do is maybe do some sort of return on investment calculator and make it a no-brainer for them. So if you bring us in, yes, it's at a cost, but actually we're going to save you money going forward. We're going to save you time rather than doing it internal. So do you guys do a little bit of that?
Yeah, I really like that thinking. We do, yeah. So a lot of our stuff is, look, it can be, Pat, we need a CTO to come in and do something for 6 months, and I need someone yesterday. So we'll still do sort of on-demand experts, which you still look at the sort of more traditional routes to getting someone very quickly, but people still want that. But even if we do that, we still do a statement of work. We still do a service wrap around it with sort of ROI check-ins when we catch up every sort of couple of weeks. But very much around our teams. It really depends. I mean, all clients are quite different, Ian. I think, I've got some client avatars who, they like to manage things themselves. They just want a team of experts around them, and then they'll manage everything, and then you have a sort of a light service overlay. And then we've got other clients that want, a full sort of deliverable-based risk versus reward type engagement. But we're very much sort of ROI-centric, value-based centric sort of client side sort of consulting. So all the benefits that we provide are documented. So the harder benefits that we might agree up front, but also the softer ones, like promoting 3 or 4 permanent people to a leadership position and coaching them into that, or spotting the hidden talent that have been forgotten about in, the dark corner of the 5th floor and stuff like that. I think it's very important.
It's very, very important. I mean, when I've worked for some of these large corporates, I have saw consultants come in, and what happens is that they get themselves in a little dark corner, knowing that they're invoicing every month, and because it's been signed off, it just becomes a regular invoice that gets paid every month, and they're literally there for years, and just kind of working as a usual employee, and not having those check-ins, not having those. You've got to work on results. You're not just sitting there to milk that cow. And as I say, I've saw people just sitting in corners and keep paying that invoice without anybody kind of overseeing them. It's just, you go and do that bit of work's yours. Well, you could just employ somebody to do that, couldn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the older way of consulting. I think the newer way of, if you're partnering with an organisation, for me, it's all about co-creation, getting right in the middle of it with the team. And regardless of whether you're consulting, regardless of whether you're permanent, regardless of whether you're a contractor, everyone should be coming together for the outcome that the business wants, for the benefit of the business, as well as the health of the organisation. And that's why we moved to Borough Market, to be honest, was we got a workspace on one of our floors is just a co-creation centre. So where our associates and clients come together and workshop. We've got a few clients where they want to work here sort of one day a week for a period of time, set up a bit of a mission war room, if you like, whilst they're sort of designing the new target operating model. And then it's really rewarding to see when you see, not just our sort of associates, but the permanent sort of team coming over and everyone working together to the common goal. I mean, I think co-creation is something that's really starting to come into the corporate landscape, and hopefully that starts to proliferate a lot more, because a lot of the corporate companies need it.
I totally agree, and I love that. I could picture that there. It sounded really good. Something you used earlier on there was top 5%. Tell me a little bit about that. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for me, top 5% is a sort of an S&S hallmark of quality, if you like. So it was something that I designed in the first year. A client said to me once, he was just like, you always give me the top 5% of the market. People who come in, they're assets. They are solution centric. They don't generate me problems. they've been there, they've done that, they've executed before. Everyone's got an ego, but on the whole, it's a positive ego, and it's sort of a client first type mentality. And they're there to benefit me, help my team, and help the organisation. So it came back. It came off the back of that kind of feedback, where I thought, when you're designing a company, you start with designing something in your own image, and a good product is top 5% knowledge workers and leaders that can come in to do good stuff and leave a legacy. In reality, what it is now is actually our process to either onboarding an associate or not. So, usually we will use people we know before who we feel are top 5%. But if there's someone who's been recommended to us, we want to make sure they've been recommended sort of several times. Then they come in and they do a variety of different workshops with some of my transformation partners who are my business partners. And then we'll use them in some of our sort of team gigs. The next step for us is to try and put some science behind that, Ian, but we haven't done that yet. So where it is now, it's top 5%, upper quartile sort of interim workers.
Yeah, rock stars.
Yeah, that's it. The ones where it goes, where'd you get that person from? She was amazing. They came in, got into the nub of the issue, and just saved me 3 months.
Yeah.
It's that kind of energy. Rockstar energy.
Love it. You mentioned one thing. I just want to touch on one of the last questions I've got for you. You mentioned about your avatar, your buying persona. Who do you actually sell to then, or negotiate with, or?
Do you know what? It's I was looking at some segmentation a couple of weeks ago, but primarily because Brexit's coming up, so I wanted to have a look at what portion of our clients are UK centric, what portion of our clients are global with a UK hub, and all those kind of things. So, and it made me realise that we just target relationships. So, on the whole, our client is a chief information officer or a chief technology officer, chief operating officer. I like to call it a business leader with a transformational or a technology focus.
Okay.
And because we follow relationships, what we find is, at the moment, it tends to be in retail, consumer B2C, quite a bit in the more, I suppose, the disruptive end of FS. So the ones that are most likable for disruption. So insurance, payments, banking. But on the whole, it's we target relationships at that sort of CXO level that I've worked with for many years, or our associates, or now operating partners have worked with for many years, and across industry. But it seems to be companies that either have to change or are proactive to changing. We found the reactive to change are just too much hard work.
Yeah.
They don't really want to change. They've got no real burning platform to do it, or they haven't got a strong leadership team to do it, or there's no real sort of onus to do it. So, it's like we had a couple of clients, we put some teams in, and the morale on the teams was pretty low, because it was like sort of, wading through tar, trying to affect anything that was positive for a number of reasons. So we tend to go for the ones that have to change. So we've got quite a few retailers we're helping at the moment, or the proactive to change, big tranche of investment, IPO target, private equity backed organizations that have got quite a focused board because there's a PE representative, and at some point they'll want to, realize their investment. And actually accelerating sort of startup ideas that are heavily funded and stuff like that. So anything to do with deploying a quick capability or helping transform an organization seems to be where we are. But, we're still quite a young organization from a company's house perspective. So still lots to do.
Yeah, I suppose you'll move where your clients want you to move. You'll have to be agile, and if they want you to do a project over here, then if it fits for you, you'll do it, and you'll probably pivot a little bit. Maybe it's only early days.
Yeah, we're always pivoting. I think one of our maxims is pivoting every 90 days. So we're always kind of trying to look at where we can pull some weeds that aren't working, or prune some of the trees and some of the products that are working, or sort of killing something that's doing quite well, but we think we could involve it in a much more positive fashion if we create the time. So always the best mentality to have.
Well, Pat, that was some awesome buzzword bingo there. We've got pulling weeds and pruning trees. What we need on a Monday at 10 o'clock. So, Pat, before we go, do you want to tell us a little bit about the book, where it come from, what the idea was, why you wrote it?
Well, they say humans do things in threes, Ian. So when I decided to resign from my board director position of my last company, I also decided to set up this new business, Sullivan and Stanley, and also write a book. So, and the reason that I made that decision, even though it felt like I was doing a bit of a number of myself at the time in the first year, was really to show the market that there was, some real thought, rigor, and insight behind the Interim Revolution, and this sort of teams as a service thing, but also give the market a bit of an insight to where I think things are going. And I'm quite glad I did, because the thing that we find we come up against sometimes is that you don't get fired for hiring IBM mentality. So if you've got a book and a bit of rigor and a bit of process with a method that you can introduce to the corporate world, which can be socialized, it really does help. But I also wanted to sort of reach out to the individual and not only the business. And what I mean by that is, one of the things people aren't talking about at the moment is this jobs revolution that's going on at the senior knowledge and executive end. So what I've kind of coined this exec or knowledge gig economy. So there's probably been about 45 to 50% increase in knowledge workers going interim or freelance. And what we're seeing is people are voting with their feet to leave the corporate world. So the lure for jobs for life and the associated benefits is starting to break down. And people actually now starting to want to have a different relationship with their work. So have a bit more flexibility, focus on the work that they want to do, build the journey that they want, rather than, sort of climbing that corporate ladder. So the reason I wrote the book was to, I suppose, call out to those individuals who felt that they might want to change and have a different relationship with their career. So if I put what my natural sort of energy source is I love connecting and I love creating opportunity for people. That's why I got into recruitment, because I could provide opportunity and also connect people to great gigs. So it was very much written with that angle. So the Interim Revolution and what that means for the individual, but also the Interim Revolution and what that can mean for the corporate world, and how there is another way, a different way, sometimes a better way to help organisations improve and transform. And that's why I've been quite generous with my key takeaways at the end of all the chapters. Is I'm hoping that it will catalyse a bit of a change, both for the individual and also for the business world. One of the reasons that I called my business Sullivan and Stanley was after my two boys. So Sullivan's 7 and Stanley's 5, and I'm hoping that this organisation will inspire a future of work for their generation.
Excellent stuff.
And that's kind of my bigger game, because as you could imagine, going into 3 or 4 different organisations every week, you see how much problems there are in the corporate world, and actually you see how disengaged individuals are.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping that will change by the time my two go through education and go to earn a living. Is actually a much more balanced sort of way of doing things, a much more focused way of doing things, more outcome based than time based. Because life's short enough as it is, Ian, as you know, and we only get one shot at it. And whichever way you look at it, we spend more time working and being a professional and engaging with people than we do at home. So there needs to be a balance. That's just a personal thing for me.
At the end of your chapters, you've got a nice kind of summary on key takeaways. You do things like the 7 key mistakes, and you drill into them. And I love that kind of structure. It's really easy to pick up and read. And you kindly said, Pat, that we can maybe run a competition for one of our listeners to win a copy of the Interim Revolution. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to offer up several books. More than happy to do that.
Good stuff. What we'll do is we'll run a competition, Pat, and we'll get them out to some lucky listeners. So, Pat, it just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time. That's been really interesting. There's a few. You've raised some good, interesting thoughts in my mind there about the way of business possibly changing, like what the future looks like in terms of people's careers. No one's getting these 40-year service medals anymore.
Ian, thanks for inviting me on the show. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, and best of luck with everything you're doing and for the rest of your Christmas parties.
Thanks to Pat Lynes there. So, on this show, we often talk about startup, small business, and I think that was interesting to have a delve into the world of larger business and how they address bringing in talent into their organisations. If you'd like to be in with a chance of winning Pat's book, you can head over to the social channels and share the post. We've got a Facebook page, which is /Industry Angel Podcast. We've actually got a LinkedIn group. We've got a Twitter account, or you could email me, host@industryangel.com. Thanks to the people that reviewed the show lately. It only takes a few minutes. Drop me a screenshot if you have reviewed so I can thank you on the show. So until next time, I'm Ian Farrar. This is the Industry Angel, and thanks for listening.